This is the restaurant set. So this is the first shot that we see at the restaurant where we dolly back away from him and kind of establish where he works and the environment that he's working in. This is completely nighttime shot. There's absolutely no light coming through the window. We did all the lighting ourselves. Here we are kind of cutting up this black material called duvetine, which you should have seen in another DVD, but if you don't know, it's kind of like a black felt material. And where we ended up using it is to cover up a soda pop machine, which you can see in the still shot up in the top left-hand corner, because we didn't want to, again, go into the usage of the logos and the trademarks associated with the soda manufacturers. So we just used a little bit of black felt to cover it up there. And it's really nice because it's a very non-reflective black material. We're cleaning up the area for the dolly where we're going to be putting the dolly track down. There's the actual restaurant manager helping us out. He's a really, really nice guy. Pretty much helped us the entire process and acted for us. And I'm sure you remember him. He is an actual restaurant manager. Here's our director of photography assembling the dolly that we're going to be using in the shot. And here's our RE kit, just 4 lights. That's all we used in the entire set. You can see that it's nighttime outside. There's no light coming in. Now here's our lighting coming back up right now. You can really see that it changed the entire atmosphere. There's our main light that's being used for his face. There's a waveform on our monitor that we're making sure that we're not losing too much of the data in the whites. Here's our DP cleaning the side of the metal housing there so that he can put in a little pump cup, and which he's going to use to attach the backlight, this is a 150 watt RE Fresnel light that he's using as a backlight. And he has turned it on, and now he's actually changing the position of the yoke so he can get a little bit more of an adjustment on it. He's turning the barn doors, and he just put in a safety harness there. That safety cable, that green safety cable, is on there just in case the suction cup fails, so it doesn't fall on the floor or fall on the actor. He's trying to suspend the cable there for the first part of the shot, but then that didn't work out at all, so he came up with another solution. He tried to attach the cable back there, and unfortunately it popped right back out again. So he had to go ahead and clean that area, which is usually in restaurants, those areas are kind of greasy because of all the cooking oil that they use. There's our 300 watt light that is being used as a fill light for his face. And you can see it kind of when we adjust it there. If it goes too far up, you don't get that light underneath the hat. You get just a nice shadow from the hat. So you have to really kind of get it down there to get that light on his face. And it looks like a really nice frame when you do that. Here it is going on and off. And here's the 150 watt RE backlight that's being used to separate him from the background. And here in just a moment we're going to see what it's doing. See that those highlights on his hat, on his body, are disappearing when we cover it up. The backlight in this case is actually also the key light. Notice that shadow that's on the metal counter underneath his arms that keeps disappearing. That is the shadow that you will have to compensate for with the fill light. When the fill light comes in, that's the light that was on the front, the 300 watt RE going through the silk, that white silk material. That's just filling in his face and filling in the actor and the body, but it's not actually the key light. There's the 650 watt spotlight that's on the outside going through that little bit of a white reflector panel, and that's the actual inside of the reflector panel, which actually acts as a diffuser in this particular case. It enlarges the light source and makes it larger and more soft, so it feels more like sunlight kind of diffusing through clouds in late afternoon. And there it is from the inside. And here's the effect that it's having on the background. Really, without it, you really wouldn't see much of what would feel like it's actually daylight coming through a window at all. It would just feel like a dark, moody scene, the way that it pretty much is actually in reality. And all the interior lights really by themselves, as you can see, wouldn't do anything. We have all the interior restaurant lights up all the way right now, and they're really not doing anything to his face at all as far as filling him in or making it feel natural or even an acceptable frame. Until we bring in the fill light, as we can see here in just a moment. It's just not, you can't see any part of the frame. It's just not acceptable. And then the combination of the fill as well as the outdoor light is going to create a really nice frame that feels like it's actually daylight coming through the window. And really we did this all with just a simple 150 watt tungsten light, a 300 watt tungsten light, and a 650 watt tungsten light, and that's pretty much it. We even have some lights left over from that kit that we just didn't even use. I mean, this is about a $2,500 lighting kit with some really nice, beautiful Fresnel lights, and we didn't even use every item that's actually inside the kit at that point. We had, I think, a 300 watt light left over that was just sitting there. Just because you have 4 lights doesn't really mean that you have to use all 4 of them. You really just need to use as many lights as you need to make the frame look the way you want it to look. And anything more will actually take away rather than add. It's true that we can always add more lights to a frame. We can always liven it up or enrich it in some way. But you also have to balance the time that you have against, how much lighting are you going to do. In this case, we only had 3 hours to get in and get out of the restaurant, and we had to do all these different scenes. We shot something like 8 scenes in that restaurant with different lighting and different environments, and you'll see all the scenes coming up here. We had to do all that in about 3 hours, so you have to kind of weigh and balance, the dolly and, the how much priority you're going to give to that, how much priority you're going to give to lighting, work it all in together and figure out how much time you're going to need. It really helps to visit the set ahead of time and make sure that you know what you're going to do ahead of time. I was able to actually visit this restaurant ahead of time and make sure that I knew exactly where the lights are going to be and how we're going to achieve this daylight look, without the use of expensive lighting. True, I could have done it also with HMI lights, and I could have, spent thousands of dollars on rentals to try to, achieve the same effect. And all it would allow me to do is just kind of widen out the frame a little bit more and see more of it. But I didn't need it. All I needed was just this much frame, and all I needed for that is just a very basic, ARRI lighting kit. And personally, whenever I can just buy a kit, instead of renting something for 2.5 days or 3 days and, spending the same amount of money, I'd personally much rather buy a kit, and that way I get to keep it forever and keep using it. Okay, now we're going to discuss white balancing. As you can see, our performer here, Jake, is holding a Warm Cards white balancing card. Now this is right here obviously a very bad white balance for a frame. This is actually daylight white balance. And what we're going to see in a moment here is the DP is going to zoom in on the card, fill the entire frame with it, and then he's going to go ahead and take a white balance off of white. That's off of white. And you can see that it's pretty much just a plain white card, and you can see his skin tone there, as soon as we whiten out, is going to be just plain. I mean, there's really no life to it. It's kind of like, if we had some makeup, maybe it could liven him up a little bit. But we didn't really like that. We were going to try to go with something a little bit different. So we had him put up a warm half. And we zoom out of that, his skin color is just a little bit more rich and it's more red tinted. So we go from a daylight balance like that, standard white balance, and to our modified white balance like this, which just has a little bit more life in it. Okay, here's when we actually start doing some dolly shots. Here's our opening dolly shot. And as you can see at the end, it is out of focus. That's because we haven't actually done any of our focus measurements yet. We haven't figured out where the dolly is going to be at position A, and then where it comes back to position B, and what the distance is at position A, and what the distance is at position B. So once we've actually measured that distance, and we've actually factored that into the camera's readout, the DP can actually, while he's pulling the camera back, can go from those two different focus points, from focus point A to focus point B. What that does is it kind of takes the visual aspect of it out of the equation, so that he doesn't really have to keep track of what's in focus in the frame anymore. He just has to go from 2 different numbers and then really just concentrate on the framing. Normally, if we had a larger crew, there would be somebody actually pulling focus for him, but because we have such a small crew, we didn't have anybody to do that for him. So we just went on autofocus, and it actually worked out pretty well in this particular circumstance. And we actually got him somebody to dolly grip for him and pull the dolly back. Here's another thing we did is we doctored up the background a little bit. You'll notice that something is going to disappear here. There it goes. We just deemed it as being something that's very distracting, and we just kind of took it out of the frame because it just wasn't really working for us. So we cleaned up the frame and the background and anything else that we needed to still do. Here's one part where we asked the actor to kind of do a little bit of a flinch while we were doing the dolly back, and it really just didn't work out, so we kind of took it out and asked him to just be steady about it. And here's one shot where we just asked him to overdo the action completely for you guys, so you can see what it would look like if somebody was just kind of overdoing it. Maybe if you were doing a comedy or something where you need to go over the top, that's what you do. Now here's a few dolly shots where the things just didn't work out. You'll notice right at the end, right there's a little bit of a tilt adjustment on the camera. I'll do it again here. You can see there goes the tilt again, and we'll keep doing it. The dolly's fine, and right at the end, bam, it just kind of tilts down there. And here's one more. Everything seems to be just fine, and then right at the end, bam, tilt down. It just doesn't look good. We'll do it again. And tilt down. That little bit of an adjustment there in the tilt on the camera does not look good. It's not a smooth stop. It's not what you'd expect to have when you're doing a smooth and steady dolly shot. Here's one more, and it just cuts off the top of his head completely. The reason being is that one person is just, it's really difficult for one person to control the camera, change the focus, and pull the dolly back at the same time. And here's the motion. So we decided to get a dolly grip. And what she was able to do is just kind of control the motion of the dolly from the front to the back without the DP having to actually pull the camera back with the dolly on it and tilt and change the focus at the same time. So it just made life a lot easier for everybody. So now here's the shot with the dolly grip actually moving the dolly. You notice that it's a lot smoother and slower, so you have a lot more control of the speed now. Okay, now here's a compare and contrast shot where we shot one scene like this with the fill light a little bit further away from the face, and here it is actually closer to the face now. I mean, you get a much better exposure. You get a nicer looking dolly shot, even though this particular dolly shot we didn't use because it kind of went out of focus right in the center. Here's another shot where we had done before that actually worked better as far as the framing. And you'll notice that in this shot he's actually looking up to the top right, whereas in the other shot he's looking more towards the bottom right. Here's the other shot again, top right. And here's the first one again, bottom right. And the reason we did these shots is because the actor himself wanted to try something different. You know, he said, you know, do you mind if I look down to the bottom right-hand side of the frame? And I said, no, absolutely. We'd be happy to do one more shot and, you know, let you, you know, give us something that we feel is different from what we were looking for. You have to do that. If your actor wants to do something different and he wants to give you something different, you got to just let him do it. A lot of times we walk into these movies and we have a preconceived notion of what we want to get out of a frame and what we want to get out of a scene, and then the actor goes and just kind of does something different and gives you more than what you were looking for before you actually went into the scene. Now this is of course time permitting. I mean, we were on a very, very tight schedule that day. We only had 3 hours to get in and get out of the restaurant, setting up all the different shots that you're going to see ahead and all the ones that you saw before. So it was really difficult kind of when the actor said, well, you know, do you mind if I try this? We were kind of done. We really didn't want to do one more dolly move, but we did it for him because it is also a confidence booster when he feels like he's able to attempt something that, you know, steps out of the norm of where he was asked to do something. Sometimes it works out, like I said, sometimes it doesn't. In this particular situation, even though we did it and, you know, he was happy with it, I didn't explain to him why I didn't want to do it that way until after he got done with it. And the reason being is that I didn't want him to think that I was just coming up with excuses on why I don't want him to do this and kind of deplete his confidence. You have to always be very careful with your actors. You have to always mind their feelings and their emotions. There are people who live in their emotional world all the time, and they're asked to portray people who they are not and portray emotions that they're not feeling. And therefore, you have to kind of always be polite, and you have to always be, you know, caring for their emotions. And if they ask you if it's okay to do something like this, I would say 9 times out of 10, try to do it. What we did is after we did this scene, I explained to the actor that the reason I didn't want him looking down like that is because, you know, the whole idea of Jake's character is that he never looks down. He's kind of always looking up. He's always looking forward, even though he's kind of in a dead-end job and, you know, he doesn't really have anywhere to go. But he just feels like maybe somewhere down the line something's going to happen in his life and he's going to make it. And after I explained that to him, he was like, wow, okay, you know, that's great. Thank you for telling me that. What that did, though, is it boosted 2 things. First of all, it allowed him to boost his confidence at the initial time by expressing himself in a way that he wasn't asked. Another thing that it did is it boosted his confidence in the director and also in his crew, that they allowed him to do what he wanted to do, but at the same time knowing that they had a different notion in mind of where they wanted to go with the scene. So they're kind of thinking ahead of him, and when they tell him to do something in a certain way, it's because it's for a higher purpose and not because no, you know, I'm the director and I'm just going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to tell you to look up to the top right-hand corner and that's just the way you're going to do it. That there is a higher purpose behind it, you know, tied into the arc of the character in the script, as we had learned before, and not just the director just telling him to do this or don't do that. Okay, now here's the scene where Jake is frying the French fries and his manager comes over and tells him to hurry it up and then hits him on the shoulder. And what we're going to discuss is how we did the lighting for this and how we orchestrated the whole thing. The set back in the frying area of the same restaurant, and essentially what we did is added a couple of light panel battery operated lights. These light panels are daylight balanced, which are very close to the fluorescent lights that are being used inside the restaurant, but we wanted to get even closer, so we added some green gels to the light panel lights, bringing their color temperature down to about 4400 degrees Kelvin from 5500 degrees Kelvin. So here's the shot with the light panels in right now at their current position, and here it is without, and again here it is with, and here it is without, and here's the DP dimming the lights up and down to show you the position. We didn't like the way that we were affecting the subject, so we changed the position of the light panels, and we put them actually right in front of Jake at this position right here. That allowed it to hit more into his face, and you can see that it really illuminates his face right there, in contrast with this shot where you can see that there's absolutely no light on his face. And here it is again with the light panels in the new position and back at the old position. Now here's Mike, the restaurant manager, coming up right here, getting some directing cues from me as to what I'm expecting from him in this particular scene. He's asking me if I want to tap the watch, at what height I want to tap the watch, and what the distance is going to be between him and Jake. And of course, Jake, I mean, he's a veteran actor. Dave, actually, the actor is a veteran, and he kind of worked with Mike too on, you know, the distances and everything. But we eventually got down to the fact that we want him to be about 8 feet away from Jake, and the reason for that is so that we wanted to throw him out of focus and actually rack focus to him and then back to Jake. That was the whole purpose and intent of the shot, was to shift the plane of focus along the z-axis, thereby using the z-axis, which is depth, away from the camera to reveal a new subject coming into the frame. And that was just to illustrate a concept. He at first wouldn't understand why he couldn't just be closer to Jake in order to better communicate with him, and you know, we just explained to him that that's just the way the camera likes it for us to do this effect. He understood right away, and he accepted the fact he was going to be about 8 feet away from Jake for the shot. So here he is. He's about to come back in. Here we go, and he comes back out, and we're going to slow the shot down and take a look at what he did. You can see that he kind of hesitated at the beginning there. Then he came in, and he didn't really fulfill his action very well. It was just kind of a rehearsal. And then, of course, Jake gave us a little bit of a smile there at the end, or a little bit of a smirk. It wasn't deadpan serious. Here's another one. And take number 2 also was very bad because Mike gave us another smile. And that kind of caused Jake to give us another smile, and it kind of threw the whole scene out of whack there. So we wanted to do it one more time. And the third time, it was a much, much better take. Let's go ahead and watch that again one more time here. Jake is kind of cooking the fries there, and then here comes Mike, comes in, taps the watch, comes back out, and hits Jake pretty hard on the shoulder. That's another thing that we really had to go over with Mike, is that he was just afraid to hit Jake too hard on the shoulder, and we told him that if he doesn't hit him hard on the shoulder, the camera's just not going to see it. So he had to make a little bit more of an exaggerated move right there to really, for the camera to be able to see that movement happen. And here's the last take that we did, a little bit kind of as a safety, because we already knew that take number 3 was going to be the one we were going to use, but we did a safety. I encourage you to always try to shoot a safety on the set, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to shoot one more take rather than come back to the edit suite and find out that all of your takes were no good because of some, you know, aspect of the frame. It's going to be a lot cheaper for you to stay an extra 5 minutes and shoot one more take rather than have to get all the actors back and the location and reshoot an entire scene again because of one missing take. For instance, on this last one, you'll notice that Mike had a little bit of a smile on his face again, didn't quite cover up his mouth the entire time with the watch like we'd asked him. Here it is in slow motion again, so you can see it. He comes in, everything's fine, he does his action, everything looks great, and on the way out there's a little bit of a smirk. And so we would have never spotted that in the field. That's just something that you would only see in post-production when you're sitting at the edit suite. It's always good to shoot a safety. Now here's the frying shot that we used in the movie, and this is actually, you know, real French fries frying in real oil. We actually ate them later. I didn't want to have Jake do this because I was kind of worried for his safety. I didn't know if the oil was going to pop and crackle, and it might actually hit his face or his arm in any way. None of us are professional restaurateurs, and so I just kind of took a close-up, and I had Mike, the actual restaurant manager, do this for us just in case, because he's more confident and he does this. He's been doing this for a while. So we just took a little bit of a close-up. You don't have to have your actor do everything. You can have other people sometimes do certain things for them that are either too dangerous, or maybe you don't have your actor anymore. Maybe he had to go home or something like that. You can have other people do it. You can take a close-up, and as long as you're careful not to show any part of the actor's body, then you're going to be okay. You'll have a shot that's usable as you saw in the movie. What we're going to do here is we're going to go over all the things that we did when Jake was cooking the burger and how we did the lighting for him. As you can see, we're showing you first the original shots from the movie. And now we're going to see a 150 watt RE light going across. And this is without the light. And then it's going to come back. And this is, of course, the incorrect exposure is what we're showing you. So this is way too much light on his face. It doesn't look right. As you can see right there, there's the RE light, and there's the DP with the camera on the tripod, and you can see the entire setup right there as it is. That major highlight on the left side there, that's what's being reflected into Jake's face to provide illumination for him, and also it kind of acts as a little bit of like what looks like sunshine, essentially. And you can see us turning it on and off there. Here it is in the off position, and here it is in the on position. So you can see that you really need that little bit of extra light there, otherwise it just doesn't feel right. That looks a little bit more sunlit. It just feels more natural for having a daylight shot. You could leave it off if you want it to be moody. That is the fill light for him. We're also flickering the light, as you can see. There's the dimmer, and we're flickering the light. You can see it's kind of flickering on and off a little bit. And we're just using a common $5 dimmer that we bought, and to just kind of dim the light up and down, to make it feel like the fire is actually burning in front of him and flickering on his face. And as you can see, it has a little bit of it's a subliminal kind of effect. It doesn't have one of those effects where you see, oh wow, yes, it is flickering on his face. It's just one of those subliminal things where your mind reads it and expects it to be there. If there's a fire there, it expects to have some kind of flickering effect on the face there. And if it's just not there, then something feels wrong. There's a lot of things that we're going to teach you how to do in this program that the mind is expecting to see something, and if it doesn't see it, it feels something's wrong. It won't necessarily go, wow, okay, that looks normal, but it'll just detect if it doesn't look normal. So here's the fill light off again. And here it is again on. As you can see, it just doesn't feel like it's a daylight shot unless that light is on. So you really have to have a fill light in order to make something feel like it's a daylight shot. When you have daylight streaming in through a window, which is supposed to be a daylight shot, you really need a lot of fill light like we have right now. And here we're asking the actor to come closer to the camera so that we can get a little bit more of an angle on his face, and we're asking him to turn his face to the right so we can see his other eye, the eye that's furthest away from us, his left eye. And you can see the flickering action again of the fire here on his face, or fake fire, which is also called a light gag. Whenever you do any kind of a lighting effect like that doesn't really exist on the set, it's called a light gag. And we'll do a lot more light gags as we go. We'll show you guys how to do all kinds of different light gags. And here's when the actor, we asked him to wet his face so that it looks like he's sweating, and you're going to see the difference in the organic feel of the frame when he has wet his face as opposed to before when it was just perfectly dry and he just looked like he was comfortable. Here it is perfectly dry, he just looks like he's comfortable. And watch, this is when he wet his face, he looks like he's sweaty, he looks like he's uncomfortable. Again, dry and wet. And so when he goes and wipes his sweat, it's just a little bit more convincing. It feels like he really is kind of sweating over a hot stove as opposed to just having fun at work. And there we adjusted the frame to the right, and we're asking him again to turn his face to his right, our left, turn more towards the camera. I froze the frame there so I can show you what it looks like before and then after. The after, of course, when his face is turned more towards the camera, he's not really even looking at the stove at all anymore. He's just looking way to the right there. It's called cheating towards the right or towards the camera, cheating towards the camera, turning your face towards the camera, because it just looks so much better. You can see both eyes. It's more of a personal type shot. Okay, and here's the medium shot again. And he's not even anywhere near the stove at this point. He's just kind of shuffling things that are sort of in front of the camera. We're just using that location because it's convincing, because of the fume hood above is absorbing all the flames and everything. But he's just turned completely almost away from the stove at this point. The smoke is really what's selling the idea, though, and the flickering lights and the key light to his left side of his face, where it's hitting the left side of his face. I mean, our left side of his face. That is also selling the idea that there's sunlight coming through the window. There goes the fill light right now. It's being turned off and coming back on right now. You can see outside already, as you can see the street lights outside. It's almost midnight at this point. It's reddish outside. There's like a reddish hue right outside the window. But we are selling the idea that this is actually a daylight shot, even though it's being shot at midnight. Okay, so here's a shot where Jake is giving a plate of food over to a customer who happens to be Kiana, our dolly grip from the last shot. And then he tries to find his pen. He couldn't find it, picks up a pen, and starts jotting some notes down on his pad. And here's when we tried to use Rachel as a customer, but unfortunately, you could see that it was Rachel from any angle that we took the shot from. You could really kind of tell that it was her. So we ended up having to use somebody else, and the only person available was our dolly grip Kiana, who was the dolly grip on the last shot. And you'll find that when you're making a movie, really you're going to end up using all of your family and friends and resources, and all of your DP's family and friends to make the movie happen. Here's when we take a measurement to make sure that the camera has the correct distance from Jake. And here he is doing the shot with Kiana again. He picks up the pad here. And we tried to pan and tilt over, but unfortunately the camera was locked there. So you always want to make sure your camera head is unlocked and ready to go. This is a kind of a cheesy shot that we did to make sure to let you guys know the difference between a cheesy kind of shot that you would do for TV and a more serious shot that you would do for film. And that, you kind of have to tone down your actors' performances for any kind of film. This is kind of that cheesy shot again. You could use this for comedy or slapstick or something for, like if you're selling a product for television, but this is more of your movie type shot. It's kind of more toned down. And we're showing you here that we can't really see the pad unless we tilt down. So instead of actually moving the camera forward or backward or getting it to a different height, the easiest way to do it is here when you see the shot getting repeated, is to just have the actor modify his blocking by just kind of lifting the pad up closer to his face. And now you can see the pen. You don't really need to see the pad, you just see the pen, which is enough to know that he's writing into something. So here's the shot with the pad up closer to his face, and here it is further down. And here it is again closer to his face. So really you don't have to move the camera, you have to do anything, you just ask the actor just change his blocking, move the pad a little bit closer to his face. Okay, and this is our famous fry throw scene that kind of got the whole crew laughing for a little bit. And here we have Mike there, and he's playing the angry customer who smells the food and doesn't approve of it and starts throwing it into Jake's face there. And of course, Jake's performance is the one that sold the whole thing. I mean, it wouldn't have been anything without that. It would have just been actually kind of mean if it weren't for that. Here's our DP adjusting the light panel to use as a fill light or a fill source for Mike on the other side here, as you can see. He connected two of them together to get a little bit more punch out of it. And what we ended up doing is using one for Mike and one for Jake. And as you can see, there's the one for Mike. And right now, Evan's hand is actually covering it up. The DP's hand is covering it up. And you can see when he removes his hand, what kind of an effect it's going to have on Mike's face. There's the effect. And we're going to put his hand back up there. There it is again. Look at the shadows on Mike's face. It's just a very small amount of fill. It doesn't have to be a lot. We're not looking for a major effect. Just a little bit of fill to kind of fill in those eye sockets a little bit. Now let's listen to me telling Mike how to throw the fries at Jake. Okay, on this one what we're going to do is you're not going to throw the whole bunch of fries at him. You're going to just throw them one at a time. Just pick one, throw it. Pick one, throw it. And he's going to shy away with each one,
That's so mean, dude.
Yep. Okay, and here he comes in. And he's just going about his business, and Doesn't like him. He starts throwing at him. Hits him in the chest first, then keeps hitting him in the chest. I actually only asked him to hit him in the chest, and actually on the next take, it was Jake's idea to be hit in the face because he said that it was going to improve his performance. And I didn't like the idea at first. I didn't want him to get hit with greasy fries in the face and in the eyes and stuff. But we went with it. That's another reason why you want to go with your actor suggestions, because look at the difference in the reaction. We the crew was pretty much on the floor. We were just laughing so hard, and he hit him in the mouth there and in the face again. It was just too precious. I mean, we're really glad that we went with the actor suggestion on this one. Okay, and here's a scene where Jake falls asleep on the job. He's just sitting there. He's been up all night. He never got any sleep, so he comes into work and he's really tired and he's starting to fall asleep. Okay, and so we noticed that there's a lot of shadow on his face there, especially from the cap. So we start bringing in the fill light to get in under the cap for this one. And here we go. We'll notice that these top lights up in the ceiling are actually spotlights, and they're creating a shadow underneath his hat. And you can see that shadow right there when we turn it on the left side of his face, and it just makes kind of like a slash across his face that does not look very flattering. So we're asking the restaurant manager right now to turn off those lights so that we can get that slash off of his face. And there they are, kind of flickering on and off. And we're trying to find the right one because there's several different spotlights. And this one is just affecting the background. And then eventually found that one. You see there's no more slash across his face anymore now. And we're going to go ahead and cut back to the one right there where you can see the slash across his face now. There was a little bit more light on the background, but it was also not very flattering on his face, so we had them turn it off, and here it is on again. And we also added some highlights, our own highlights in the background by using a light panel, and here it is actually coming on, and you can see the highlight coming on in the soda machine back there in the metal part. And all that is just a little pocket LED light panel kind of coming on at about daylight balance and adding a little bit more highlight in the background there. Okay, and here's Jake, and he's about to fall asleep there, and we told him to take his time and get his beats very long, which means to take his time, to not worry about having to contain his performance in a very small amount of time. And being the actor that he is, he dropped the pen there, because it's just a natural thing to do. And here comes Mike, the manager, and he's trying to figure out why Jake is sleeping on the job, and he flips his hat off. So, and as you can see that Jake right there, he went out of frame. We were cutting off his face entirely. We didn't expect him to come up that far, but we didn't want to really do any adjustments in the frame. So what we had him do is adjust his blocking. I mean, again. This is something we wanted the frame to stay exactly the same way, so we just had him not rise up and out of the frame. So there's the second take. He stays where he is. He does not rise up and out of the frame. And again, this is because we did not want to tilt up. We did not want to change the perspective. We did not want to see any other part of the restaurant. We wanted the frame to remain locked, so we asked the actor to contain his performance within the frame. There's the camera 2. Shooting concurrently. It was shooting at the exact same time as camera 1 so that we can get both the same action on both cameras at the same time. We don't have to keep repeating it again and again. There's definitely a lot to be said for having two cameras on the set at the same time that are perfectly synchronized with each other as far as the look and the appearance, and possibly even timecode if you can. If you can't synchronize timecode, you don't really have to. As long as they look exactly the same, they're the same two cameras, and they've both been calibrated to get the same image. There's a lot to be said for having two cameras on the set. The only problem is that, of course, the lighting will primarily be right for one camera. The main camera will have the best lighting. The secondary camera will probably have substandard lighting, as you can see in the shots here. However, when you only have 3 hours to get, something like 8 scenes in a location, you really don't have time to go and ask the actor to repeat the performance 4 or 5 times to get it from 2 different perspectives, or even 3 perspectives. It's nice to have another camera running simultaneously, getting all the close-ups, or another medium shot from a whole different kind of angle. And what you want to remember is to change the height, the angle, and the framing from camera A to camera B. So change the height, the angle, and the framing. If you do that, they're not going to jump cut, and in fact they're going to be a seamless cut because it's the exact same action taking place from both cameras. It gives you a lot more flexibility in post-production. It is really a wonderful thing when you can get it. If you can rent another camera for a day when you have a lot of different shots to get and run that camera simultaneously and get all the close-ups, you're going to find that your day is going to go by so much faster. Like I said, the only disadvantage is that you're not getting to relight for a close-up or light things right for camera B. It's just getting whatever it's getting. Maybe you can put a little bit more lighting for it, but you're not going to get the best lighting for camera B, but at least you'll get the shot. Okay, and here is the bathroom shot, it's actually the bathroom scene more than anything else. This is just the opening shot of it. Now here are the flickering lights above us, and the reason we kept the flickering lights and we didn't turn them off or replace the bulbs is because we liked how it added to the tension and also to the darkness and the isolation of Jake's job, and kind of really with lighting really enhance the mood. And there's a close-up, and there's some other close-ups of Jake, doing things around the bathroom, like washing his hands and stuff like that, and then here he is leaving again. And if you watch it again, the flickering light is coming from that natural fluorescent that's actually inside the room that has maybe a bad ballast or a bad capacitor inside it. It was kind of funny watching the customers in that restaurant kind of look at us as three guys went into the bathroom at the same time with two cameras, and it was kind of it was a little weird. But anyway, so we walked in there with these two light panels, and we dimmed up the light panels in order to get some light on Jake's face, and you can see the light there. And it's a pretty well lit frame. It feels natural. It feels like there's a fluorescent light in there. And the height of the light panels on the stand is what causes it to be realistic and to sell that effect, Notice that the shadow from the overheads right there is in the same position as just about as in the shadow from the light panels. That's also, it sells that effect because it's consistent exposure. We motivated our lighting directly from the overhead lights. And also watch what happens when we add the second light panel right there. You get an even better exposure on the frame. Here's what happens when you add just some gain from the camera if you don't want to do any lighting in a situation like this. So this is with 12 decibels of gain. That's if you did not use lighting. This is what your frame would end up looking like. Not very good. Very heavy flicker. But if you use the light, then that's a continuous source of light, and it kind of balances out the flicker in those overhead fluorescents. There's our DP. He's got camera A, and he's practicing his move at this point. And here comes Jake into the door. We're just rehearsing at this point. So he's got his bag on and his white T-shirt. And he practices changing into the green T-shirt, which is the one he's going to be wearing when he's on the bike. Puts on his bag, looks at himself in the mirror, and kind of evaluates his life a little bit, and walks out of frame. And we shoot complete scenes, which means we shoot him walking in, actually performing his action, and then walking back out of the scene. That gives you a complete scene with a master shot. And here's the DP actually filming him. Tilts up to him, pans around with him, kind of like he's on a tripod, and films him doing his action. And the reason we didn't start our shot at eye level, where we see Jake coming in like this, and seeing him kind of walking in full figure, and instead we shot starting at the doorknob like this, tilted down, and then tilting up to Jake as he walks in, is because we didn't know if the preceding shot was going to be something like this, where the final part of that scene is going to be this shot right here. And when you go from a shot like that with your main actor in the frame like that to this shot right here, it might feel like a jump cut. I mean, we didn't really know if it was going to be about the same kind of framing. So the best way to take care of something like that is to start your new scenes with a shot like this, where you're tilted down towards some object or part of the frame that doesn't have your main actor in it. That way, when you cut from a scene like this, where your actor occupies the same amount of space in the frame and the same part of the frame as your next shot, you're not going to end up with a jump cut. You'll end up with a very nice cut, actually, that feels like some time has elapsed, some time has been traversed, and it doesn't feel like there was a jump in the action. That is the best way to start a new scene, is by pointing the camera at some object in the frame and then, dollying or tilting or panning over to your subject. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about close-ups, and it's really important to also get close-ups while you're filming your action. The reason being is that um, the best way to be able to pace the edit later on in post-production is to have close-ups to insert in between your action. If you find out that the scene that you shot isn't exactly, running as smoothly or as quickly as you wanted it to run, the only way that you can break up that action is by inserting some close-ups of the action. You can kind of trim up the scene that way. But there's, for instance, camera 2 right now picking up all the close-ups, water coming on, him rinsing his hands with it, and then eventually the paper towel, him trying to get the paper towel. I mean, all those things are very critical close-ups that you can get right now. It won't take you but 2 seconds to get him with camera 2, concurrently as the action is being filmed with camera A. And then you'll find that later on in post, they're going to save your life. I mean, you'll get to a point where you're going to say, boy, I really wish I could make the scene only last a minute and a half instead of a minute 45. It would just feel a lot more appropriate. And the only thing that's going to be able to bail you out at that point is close-ups and, cut-ins and cutaways. The most important thing is to also stay on the same side of the actor when you're doing all the close-ups, or doing them from his perspective. Now let's talk about acting a little bit over here. Watch his facial expressions as he gets the paper towel. See how he kind of really indicates that he's dissatisfied with the fact that the dispenser isn't actually working properly. Let's watch it again. See, he kind of shakes his head left and right. And that's also called indicating, because he's kind of exposing his inner feelings in kind of a fake kind of way. Now watch it on take 3. See, it's more subdued. It's not quite as obvious as take 2 again. Let's watch take 2 again. See, it's more of like a major head movement. So you want to tell your actors, when you're guiding them, sometimes they don't know they're doing this. You have to guide them and tell them that you don't want them to indicate how they're just being dissatisfied. You want it to just show up in their face and in their eyes, but not too much in their body movements. Now watch this again. This is when he looks at himself and he evaluates where his life is headed and he's dissatisfied. And watch it in a different take. See how he kind of puts his hands on his sides right there? Just kind of, it's another method of indicating where he's just, oh my God, I'm going to put my hands on my sides. I'm just so dissatisfied with my life. But watch take 3 again. He's just deadpan into the mirror. You get more of a really organic kind of natural feeling of his performance. You want to try also to watch all those kind of things when you're guiding your actors on the set as a director, to not let them indicate their emotions, but to let it come through the eyes and in the face, rather than putting your hands on your sides and going, my God, I am dissatisfied with my life. Acting for movies is a very, very subtle type of approach. The more subtle you are usually, the more of an effect you're going to have on your audience, as long as the story is there and as long as the audience understands your character and sympathizes with them. And as long as you've done your homework and done your biographies and the actor has been prepared and has rehearsed, all those things will come to life on the set. And a look into the mirror, just deadpan, unlike this, is going to create a much better effect. When he looks like that into the mirror, you can just really sense how he's feeling and that he's dissatisfied, as opposed to when he's kind of shuffling his hair and putting his hands to his sides and not even looking at himself in the eyes. He's just looking down at his chest. It just does not have the same effect. This is also still at the restaurant within the 3-hour time span that we had over there. This was also a very fun scene to do because we got to play a little bit with soap and with a very, very fun actor. He's actually not really an actor by craft, but he did a really good job today. That's him right there. His name is Levon, and he's a dishwasher over at the restaurant where we were filming. Really, really great guy and took direction really well. Here I am helping him spread some soap on the wall. And here comes Jake right there, and you can see the light panel up in the top right-hand corner and our DP on the left side with the camera. You can see that Jake is passing very close to the camera. And you can see that on this shot coming up over here, Levon is saying goodbye to him, and that's one of the things that kind of bolsters Jake's persona in the movie. By exploring his relationships with his coworkers, as we mentioned in DVD 2. Does he get along with his coworkers or does he not? Yes, true, he doesn't get along with the manager. I mean, not by his own fault, because the manager just doesn't maybe like him or doesn't like him when he does certain things. But how he gets along with Leon, he gets along really just fine. And that just goes to show you more about Jake's personality. So here's our DP adjusting the light panel. You can see one is pointing to the right, one is pointing to the left. One is pointing to the right to brighten up Jake's face. The other one's pointing to the left so that it'll put some light into Levon's face. And that way you can see both the guys. You can see that they're both pretty well exposed, considering that we're dealing with a flickering fluorescent type of area that is pretty dim lighting, and you really wouldn't be able to see much of anything in that frame if it weren't for those two light panels right there. There's our DP right there, and he's getting ready for the shot. And the two light panels, again, they're daylight balanced. In this case, they also have a green gel placed inside them, which brings their color temperature down to 4,400 degrees Kelvin from 55. Here comes Jake down the hall, and you can see that he sidesteps the camera right there, which is a very, very unnatural way of kind of getting around the camera. If there's a camera there and the audience knows there's a camera there, then it's okay for him to sidestep. But if there is supposed to be no camera there, then it's unnatural. This is part of the fourth wall theory that a lot of stage actors are familiar with, and also movie actors as well, which is that the audience is not supposed to be aware of the camera in any way, shape, or form, unless the director or a storyteller intends it that way. But in a movie like this, where you're not really supposed to be aware of the camera, the audience is just supposed to be a casual observer or an onlooker into this person's life, then you're going to end up pulling them out of the movie and out of that state of suspended disbelief if you end up making them aware of the camera and the presence of the camera in the shot. Okay, now here comes Jake coming down the hallway, and you'll notice behind him there's another worker carrying some cleaning supplies, and he's coming down the hallway too. That really also sells the idea that this is an active restaurant. You want to try to include other people in the frame. Here he is, he's not sidestepping the camera this time. Here it is again, he does not sidestep the camera. It is a much, much more natural way of kind of getting around there. He is also very, very close to the camera. I mean, in both circumstances, he was very close, but in this case, we just told him, please don't sidestep the camera, and he was able to do it very well. But on this shot, unfortunately, when we panned over to the right, camera A picked up that light stand on the right side, so we had to scrap that shot and do it again. That's another one of those things where if you don't catch those things on the set, they're going to get you later on in post. And then we get a close-up, and the reason we got a close-up is because you never really can tell when you're going to get a light stand in the shot like we just did in the wide shot, and if we hadn't spotted that in the field, we would have been, oh my god, how do we bail out of this? How do we save this entire scene? The only thing that's going to save you is a close-up. You got to shoot just a close-up like that. And it also sells the actor's performance too. It allows the actor to get really personal with the audience. Also, you want to shoot these little cut-ins too. It's not a cutaway, it's a cut-in into the action because it's part of the main action of the scene. When you shoot a cutaway, it's totally unrelated to the action, but in this case, this is a cut-in, which means you're cutting into the action that just took place in the scene, where he tosses his apron into the hamper. And here's where a young lady who was also helping us, who works at the restaurant, tried to remove a jacket that was in the frame because she thought it was going to be in our way, and then we had to, tell her to please don't do that because it would break the continuity, for the close-up. So you want to make sure that when you go to do a cut-in or a close-up, that everything remains exactly the same when you're doing it, because otherwise it's going to break the continuity and the audience will feel like something is wrong or something is missing. And here's the reverse angle from Levon's perspective. And we slowed it down here to show you how when he turned around, he pretty much looked at the camera right there. And do it one more time here. See, he kind of looks at the camera. This happened really fast. I mean, you really could barely tell that he looked at the camera, but you never really know. I mean, if you're not really paying a lot of attention. So we did another take. And he did a great job on the second take. He did not look at the camera as we asked him. It's another one of those things where you just want to pay a lot of attention, and you also want to do a couple more takes. Even if you feel like you got it, just do a safety. Do one more take where you ask the actor to do something completely different, or you ask him to do the same thing again, but just pay a lot more attention just in case you miss something on the last take. Pay a lot of attention to the frame rather than the performance in case you need to bail into that shot. And that's also where the close-ups will save you. I mean, if you got this shot, this reverse angle, but you did not get the close-up, maybe, you wouldn't be able to use it because Levon almost looked at the camera there. And also, another thing I want to tell you about this frame is that, see that hook in the foreground, and then you've got the foreground hook, and then you've got Levon in the midground, and you've got Jake in the background. So you've kind of got that really nice layered depth of perspective from the hook to Levon to Jake, and it creates a really nice depth to the frame. We're not even talking about the psychological impact of Jake being on the hook at the restaurant and kind of trying to break away from that kind of line of work and getting into writing. The audience gets all that. When you put it in a frame and you've got it there, really the audience picks up on it as long as you're framing everything properly and you're going about your story properly. Okay, and here's another scene that we did at the restaurant where Jake has a lot of energy because he got a lot of sleep and he's excited to go home. He wants to go home and get back to writing. So he's doing all of his work really fast. The manager stops by. He's really satisfied with what Jake's doing. He passes by and just kind of, smiles at him and keeps on going. And here's Jake preparing the frame. He's making all these little crumbs that he's going to have to wipe for the scene. And we're just kind of showing what he's doing before the actual shot starts there. When you have professional positive actors, they really help you out on the set. They keep a lively kind of atmosphere, and they also don't mind doing stuff like that. They don't really say, "Oh, art department, come on over here and do this." They'll be perfectly willing and happy to take care of this stuff for you and make it so that you have an easier job. And so here he is kind of cleaning the counter, and then he writes his notes, and manager passes by again, takes a look at it. And then we did a medium shot. So the first one was a wide shot. This is a medium shot now of the action. We just wanted to get slightly different perspective. Here he is. We're telling him to raise his head so that we can actually see his face underneath his hat. So we're telling him to cheat his head up so we can actually see his face underneath the hat. And if you don't do those kind of things, you're going to end up missing on the action. You won't use the shot at all. You want to try to never break the audience's connection with the actor's face and eyes as much as possible for more than like half a second. You really don't want to do that any more than that. You want to try to keep that connection because the audience is almost always connected to the actor's face and to his eyes, and any connection that is broken there is going to kind of send your audience's attention away somewhere else. So we asked Mike, the manager, to go one way and also come back the other way and do the same action. That way we can, if we can choose to use one or both of those shots later on in post. And here's another perspective where we got the camera up higher and we're looking down at Jake, and we have him pretty much practically on his knees there. And he's also doing something where he's kind of got a lot of excess energy. He's really excited to go home and start writing, and he's just beating on the pad there. And I'm giving him cues as he goes because he doesn't really know what he wants to do. So he's essentially just listening to me, and I'm telling him what to do. And here's an example of that. Look more up, almost towards the camera. And pick up that whole top sheet and start ripping in little pieces. And now start doodling on one underneath it. Start doodling. Now push the whole thing away and just storm your fingers. Stop playing with your hat. Play with your hat. Put it on your head, then put it on your head backwards. Now backwards. And cut. Now, by all means, I try not to do that too often. I try not to do a thing where the actor's just, essentially doing exactly what I'm telling him to do on the set. We only do that usually when it's something that's either that we're coming up with on the fly, or, it's unrehearsed kind of improv type of thing, or if we're short on time and we really, really have to get through a scene and I just need to get exactly what I need to get for the editing and I just need to kind of move on to the next scene, which is what happened in this particular situation. Most of the time, I try to kind of tell the actor what I want ahead of time and then allow them to make an interpretation of what I told them to do. That's part of the bio and the rehearsal and working with your actor and then working from take to take. But during the take, you want to try to avoid giving your actor a lot of specific instructions, because then what happens is it becomes a relationship where the actor becomes kind of like a robot and he's just kind of performing what the task that you're telling him to perform on a moment-to-moment basis, and it takes away the actor's artistic input into the scene. And when you have a professional actor like David over here who's playing Jake, you really don't want to take away his artistic input into the scene, because that's half the equation. I mean, half of it is what you're doing and all your crew and everything, and then half of it is what he's doing. In fact, in some scenes, it's 90% him, and then it's 10% what you're doing. So if you go and you take that away, it's just going to be a detrimental effect altogether. You're not going to be happy with the result, and also you've just removed the emotional aspect of that scene, entirely. So try to primarily work with your actors way ahead of time by doing rehearsals, by working on the bio, by working on the script way ahead of time, and also give them a specific action, or tell them to do a scene in a certain way. Allow them to make an interpretation of that scene and do it themselves, and then once the take is done, then you can modify their behavior for the next take and say, okay, I would like for you to do it this way instead, and then let them do the take again. But try not to communicate with them during the take, and give them specific instructions like that, unless it's one of those situations we talked about where it's just a time thing, or you need to get very specific things very quickly and move on to the next scene. But generally, you don't want to do that. Now here's a cut-in that we did where we cut into the action of him kind of tapping his feet, and we got that for editing, for pacing later on. We made sure that the ground is dirty, and his pants are a little dirty, because we wanted to make sure that it looks like he's working in a restaurant and he's not just an actor that has some nice pants and he just walked on the set. Here he is tapping his fingers on the desk, and we increased the brightness on that fill light that's on his hands. As you can see, it kind of goes in and out there, and we eventually focused and we got the brightness up on his hands so it feels like it's also daylight coming through the window. We don't want to ever lose the idea that this is actually a daylight shot, and if we ever get the sense that this is actually a night shot being done in a restaurant at night, it's going to kind of take the audience out of that feeling that we're actually watching a real event taking place during daylight, and then they just feel like, oh, well, this is just an actor on a set at night, and it takes them out of that emotional response to the movie. So we continue doing some cut-ins over here, the same kind of a thing. Then we do a cut-in into his face, and as you can see, we're lowering the fill light that we talked about before to get in under his hat, even lower. Like, I mean, it's way below eye level at this point. We brought it over to the left a little bit, but we didn't like the way it was looking because there was no shadow quality anymore. So we put it back over to the right side again, and so we can get a little bit more definition in his face, and you kind of get a sense that his face becomes more three-dimensional at that point. It has more shadow to the left, and it's more bright to the right side, and it feels like it's a rounded shape rather than just a flat shape, like a flat image on a screen. And here's when we start to do the wrap. That we're done with all the restaurant shots. We did about, I think, 8 scenes in about 3 hours. Just a landmark achievement for such a small crew. It was primarily Mike over here, who's one of our grips, and our DP, and me, and Kiana, our dolly grip / actress. And we all kind of put in a little bit, especially Mike over here. He was the fry thrower guy, and he was a grip, and he helped us with everything. You'll find that in all these small shoots and all these small movies, everybody has to pitch in. It's just nobody's really is allowed to be a prima donna and kind of walk in on the set and go, okay, I'm the actor. I can't do anything else but just act. Here's Jake putting everything back together, putting the restaurant back together exactly the way we found it. And that also maintains a relationship with the restaurant owners and managers, who are really, really nice people, by allowing us to come in at a very, very small cost and shoot at this restaurant, that they don't feel like they made a mistake. And here's Jake removing the stickers, the black stickers from all the soda pop machines, and we have the little red thing over there to cover up the brand names. But that's why we had that black duvetine on there, is to cover up all the soda pop manufacturers. So everybody pitches in. It's a small production. Nobody can just come in and just do one thing. Everybody has to double and triple and sometimes quadruple duties on the set. I, for instance, had to direct. I had to handle, some of the lighting, and I had to shoot B camera. I had to help with the setup and the teardown after I got done filming here a little bit. I had to manage the relationships with the restaurant owners and the location. I had to do all the release forms with Levon and the restaurant manager. I had to actually pay the restaurant manager for being there late until midnight, or actually past this. We shot until 12:30. Had to make sure to go back through the set, make sure we picked up every little bit of equipment or any bit of trash that was on the ground that we maybe created or possibly created or maybe even didn't. I had to pick it up and make sure that when the guys come into work the next morning, they don't find any remnant of us being there at all. And like I said, that's how you maintain relationships with people who provide you locations and are very, very nice to you, because they know that you're a small crew and a small production, and they really are just being nice to you. They really have no preset reason for allowing you to come into their lives and just turn their entire workplace upside down. You're not paying them $5,000 to be there. You're barely paying them a couple of $100 just to kind of allow you to come in for a couple of hours, and that's a privilege. And you have to treat that as a privilege and not as a right. And just treat all the people who are on the set and all the people who are providing you with locations with a lot of respect and appreciation. And you get to shoot one more day if you do that.